I leave the floor to the third panelist. We have Leon with a very interesting topic concerning assessing inventiveness of computer implemented inventions under the UPC. Please, Leon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mario. And first of all, of course, cheers, everyone. So my aperitivo is a non-alcoholic strawberry-based drink. And I'm happy to talk today about assessing inventiveness of computer-implemented inventions under the UPC. And in particular, I would like to raise the question whether the standard the UPC applies is the same standard as the EPO. So while this might sound like a very abstract legal question, from my perspective, this is highly relevant for enforcing software patents in Europe, because as all of you will know, getting a patent before the EPO is only half of the battle. For enforcing the relevant patents, there's kind of another second round of examination in invalidity proceedings. And therefore it is very interesting to see how the UPC deals with these questions. And in this regard, we got a first decision issued 1 month ago, I think, from the Court of Appeal of the UPC, which I will present in the next 10 minutes of this talk. But before this, let's have a brief look at how patentability of computer-implemented inventions is assessed before the EPO. So the way to get a software patent before the EPO can be illustrated as passing 3 hurdles. The first hurdle is patent eligibility. This is due to the fact that we have Article 52 saying that there are some subject matters which are not patentable as such, for example, mathematical methods as such, or inventions dealing with the presentation of information as such, and a couple of other things. However, this patent eligibility hurdle is in practice the easiest one could say, because in the end, this is just a matter of wording. So by ensuring the correct wording, you can easily pass that hurdle. The second hurdle, novelty, normally you can also go around this. This is not the problem. In practice, the most challenging part is the inventive step. And this is due to a peculiarity of software inventions established by the EPO and known as the convict approach. The convict approach tells us that first of all, it is legitimate to have a patent claim in which you have both technical features and non-technical features. And here, non-technical features can in particular be understood features which relate to subject matters which are excluded according to Article 52. So it's okay to have this mixture in the claim. However, only features that contribute to the technical character of the invention are taken into account when assessing the inventive step, and all other features cannot support the presence of inventive step. And this is, from my perspective, a peculiarity of software inventions where you have a patent claim where you might have distinguishing features over the prior art. And these features may even not be obvious, but still you may not use them because these are considered non-technical features. So you fail at the inventive step hurdle. That's why patenting software before the EPO is challenging in a sense. And now let's turn to the UPC decision. So this is the decision in the case Abbott versus Zynercare Minarini, issued in April 2026. And fortunately, the invention protected is rather easy to explain, I would say. So Claim 1 is directed to a glucose monitoring system, essentially comprising a glucose sensor, which is attached to the human body, and a receiver unit. In the actual product, the receiver unit is a smartphone, and on the smartphone we have a smartphone application. And the claim has a strong focus on the graphical user interface implemented by the smartphone application. So in feature 1.6 at the bottom, we already see the display is configured to render a plurality of display screens. And one of these display screens is a so-called timeline graph screen, which we also see on this illustration here on the right of the current slide. And yeah, moreover, looking at the second part of the claim, there's a couple of features specifying this timeline graph screen. So first of all, sub-feature A says the timeline graph screen comprises a timeline graph comprising the plurality of monitored glucose levels. So this is rather straightforward. This system is adapted to monitor the glucose levels by sensor measurements, and these sensor data are illustrated as a timeline graph. Then sub-feature B is directed to the feature that you have lower and upper target indicators. So these are just two constant lines in the timeline graph. And now the relevant part begins, feature C and D. The timeline graph screen also comprises event data icons. And the description of the patent explains that events are, for example, if the user is doing sports or the user is having lunch or whatever event that may be relevant to the glucose level of the user is considered as such an event. And these events are illustrated as event data icons in the timeline graph screen. And this happens in a way that the event data icons occur at the position. So the position of the event data icons correlates with the timeline graph, with the time axis thereof. And finally, feature D explains that these event data icons are not only shown in the graph, but the user can also interact with these event data icons in a way that the user can select a certain event data icon, open it, and then he can read further display details of the selected event. Okay, so let's have a comparison with the closest prior art. The closest prior art obviously disclosed something which can be seen as a timeline graph screen. And also we have the timeline graph itself and also the lower and upper target indicators. What is missing is the features related to the event data icons and also the interaction with the event data icons. So these are distinguishing features over the closest prior art. And now we are exactly in such a case, which I try to illustrate on my first slide with these three hurdles. So now we have a patent claim which passed the first hurdle of patent eligibility. It also passed the second hurdle of novelty. Now we are in front of the inventive step hurdle. We can even assume that these features related to the event data icons are not obvious by the closest prior art. But still, the crucial question is, can we base an inventive step argument based on these features? Because, yeah, the question is, do these features contribute to the technical character of the invention or not? And the respondent, of course, argued that this is not the case. The respondent did a line of argumentation, which we receive from EPO examiners, from my experience, quite often. So the argument is just displaying event data icons. This is presentation of information. Presentation of information is something which is excluded from patentability according to Article 52. And therefore, applying the COMVIC approach, these features C and D need to be excluded from the assessment of inventive step. And therefore, the claim is not inventive. And interestingly, the Court of Appeal in that case came to a different result. So first of all, and maybe most importantly, the Court of Appeal clarified that a claim feature should not be excluded from the assessment of inventive step only because it is a non-technical feature. Instead, also non-technical features can contribute to the technical character of the claimed invention, namely when they interact with other claim features and by this producing a technical effect or establishing a technical character of the claim. And therefore, yeah, these features all need to be assessed together. And the Court of Appeal also explicitly referred to the convict approach in that analysis. So these are the overall principles of assessing this as described in the decision. And more precisely, coming back to the precise claim in that case, so the Court of Appeal argued that if the user wants to get a better understanding of the glucose level at some point in time, he can easily do this, or the claimed system ensures that the user can easily access this information by means of these event data icons, because they are not only displayed in the graph, the user can also identify relevant data icons at the relevant time in the graph, open these event data icons and get more information. And for this reason, the Court of Appeal concluded that these features are resulting in the technical effect of improved assistance to the user's diabetes control. And what is interesting, or most interesting from my perspective, the third bullet point on that slide, the Court of Appeal stated that these measures are technical and certainly contribute to the technical character of the invention. So instead, actually, it would already be enough if they would have acknowledged that these features contribute to the technical character. But they even went one step further and acknowledged that these measures are technical in itself. Anyway, these technical features should contribute to the inventive step, and as a result, the Court of Appeal acknowledged that this claim is inventive over the closest prior art. Okay, I think I will skip this slide for time reasons. A few words to conclude. So what have we seen here in this case? The Court of Appeal clearly clarified that there should be no exclusion of non-technical features only for the reason that they are mentioned in Article 52 as non-inventions. And instead, these features can contribute to the technical character by means of interaction with other claim features. So there's no isolated consideration of features, and in a sense, from my perspective, this can also be seen as some kind of holistic approach. So no isolated consideration, but consideration of the claim as a whole. And coming back to my initial question, whether the UPC and the EPO apply the same standards here, my answer to that is a bit twofold. So on the one side, I see that the UPC in the decision clearly refer to the principles established by the EPO case law. So they clearly refer to the convict approach and to G1 of 19. And also their line of argumentation is absolutely in accordance with these principles established by the EPO. On the other side, I was a bit surprised that the UPC so clearly acknowledged that improving user-machine interaction is a technical problem. And from my perspective in practice, even though using the same standards, from my experience, the EPO appears a bit stricter than the UPC in applying these standards. All right, thank you. And that's it from my side.
Thank you, Leon. Very insightful presentation. Thank you so much. I do read that we do have a question. Very happy for that. Dear Leon, again, many thanks. Very interesting. It appears that the UPC further develops the EPO case law in a more pragmatic or holistic direction. What do you say? Do you agree to the comment we receive from the audience?
Yes, so I agree that the approach the UPC took here is relatively pragmatic and holistic, and personally, I like that. Of course, it is difficult to generalize from this single decision. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, this is the only decision we have seen from the UPC in that field so far. But yeah, personally, I absolutely agree to that approach, and yeah, hope that this is, or I'm actually sure that this is good news for patent holders in that sense.
We have another last question. I don't want to steal time from Daniel. So, would you draft your claims differently in light of this decision?
Good question. I'm not sure if I would draft claims differently, but from my perspective, it's very interesting to see that the UPC, as I mentioned earlier, gave a strong position to this human-machine interaction. So as a drafting tip, I think it's definitely valuable to include some description of how the user interface enables the user to use the system more efficiently, better, and so on. So at least as a backup line of argumentation, I think it's definitely valuable to have features like this into your application.
Yeah, I do agree. Also, non-technical features maybe could be added in the patent drafting. I'm not a patent drafter. Thank you again so much